What do you get when you mix two hearts of gold, two unbreakable spirits, and two people who have both been practicing martial arts at an elite level since they were 4 years old? Spoiler! You get Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. What do you get when you put a dominant champion who has never been submitted against a submission-focused, undefeated top contender? Spoiler, same thing. Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. If you don't know who these people are, now you know. Not only that, though, what do you really know? Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez is my highlight for UFC 312 because the MMA story behind it is so deep on both sides, and both of these women are incredible people and incredible mixed martial arts practitioners, and really it is a story of Unbreakable, which is literally the title of a documentary that you should definitely check out about Tatiana Suarez on HBO. Super informative. But let's start talking about Zhang Weili. Who is she? Zhang Weili burst into the scene and quickly amassed a very well-deserved following and made her way to the championship to become the first ever Chinese champion, first ever Asian champion of the UFC. That's a pretty insane double whammy, but where did she even come from? How did this come to be? So if you don't know Weili, she started training martial arts as a little 4-year-old, and she wanted really early in her life to go and become a martial artist. There was not really an MMA scene in China, but obviously many of us know martial arts is huge in China. That's where martial arts is founded in many ways. But, Weili didn't come from a very affluent background. Her dad was working in the coal mines. Their whole family was living in 160 square feet. That's a lot. Got to go somewhere else to use the bathroom, and kids kind of managed themselves. But eventually she did make it to Handan, China, where there is this massive martial arts school. I mean, this is not a joke. And not only was this a really intense martial arts school, but the ratio of boys to girls was about 10-1, so really an uphill battle, but all the training is the same. They don't separate you, and that is where Weili started to really cultivate her spirit, working harder. She came in pretty green, but amassed some skills, and she left the school at 16 to go to Nanjing to train, but quickly things were a bit derailed for her when she had a really major back injury, and she didn't tell her family or her doctors for a long time, and eventually she had to make a switch, and she made things work in Beijing in a variety of different jobs, trying to find her way back to martial arts, so working as a front desk, a kindergarten teacher, a bodyguard, hello. And then finally one day she got a very interesting call for a job as a receptionist at a gym, and this gym had a ring, So she started training there before and after hours, outside of her job as a receptionist at the gym. I mean, it's so movie-like. And, then she was noticed by Kai Zhuzhen, which is her head coach since the beginning of her career as a mixed martial artist and right now. And he's coaches at China Top Team, which I didn't even know was a thing, but they met in 2012. And right then and there, he knew she was different. Finally, it took a little bit, but they were able to book her first pro fight. MMA just it wasn't huge in China at the time. And that was in 2016. And she was on that hustle after that. So fun fact about Weili, in 2017, she fought 11 times. Hello? Is that even safe? I can answer that. No, it's not. She finally makes her way to the UFC, signs in 2018, makes her way up to the title, wins the title, loses in the second title defense to Rose Namajunas, comes back 2020, fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk on International Women's Day. Hi, hello. Love that. And that fight is super legendary. It's one of the greatest fights that we've ever even seen in the UFC period. If you haven't seen that fight, I'm sure that you've seen some of the memes, I guess you could say, some of the viral, or I guess I'm sure that you've seen some of the viral clips or photos of Jędrzejczyk's face. The hematoma on her forehead blew up completely. She didn't even look like a human being anymore. Weili's rise to the top was pretty fast. She got the belt, lost it to Rose, kind of felt like maybe the dream had collapsed, but she picked herself up again. After the loss to Rose, the first loss, TKO. You're seeing clips of yourself on Instagram getting knocked out, and it's brutal enough to be knocked out, but then to have the whole internet turning on you. But she comes back again, doesn't win the decision rematch, but puts on an incredible show, shows such a great skill level evolution. It was amazing to see. Fights Jed Jasek again, knocks her out, chokes Carla out, gets the belt back, because by then Carla Esparza was the champion. She is representing her country in so many ways. She is the first ever Chinese champion. She's also an amazing person, an amazing athlete with an incredible spirit, a lot of really cool things to say.
武术艺术家应该就是这一个门派或者在一个领域里面是非常厉害的，不是说我只是会打就可以了，它是需要很多文化来支撑的，还需要你的头脑。
All the while, there's been another story. So, who is Tatiana Suarez? Other than Wrestling 101. Like Weili, she started martial arts when she was 4 years old, barely. She started wrestling because of her brother, and her mom pushed both of them really hard. She was quickly recruited to the Olympic team for wrestling because of how successful she was. She was just absolute dominance from ages 4 years old into a teenager. Things were quickly derailed, however, when she suffered a major neck injury. I mean, she was cracked all over the place, but the thing is it was even worse than that, because you get the scan and turns out that she's got thyroid cancer. Let's say you get into a traumatic accident, like a car wreck, something like that. They're going to want to scan you out, and oftentimes that's where lumps and tumors are found. People aren't having symptoms. Tatiana wasn't exactly having symptoms, but so kind of a silver lining. They found out that she had cancer, and it wasn't simple. It wasn't just, cut it out. She had to have lymph nodes removed as well. And if you know anything about the thyroid, it's responsible for regulating the body. So this is really serious. A regular person without their thyroid would struggle in day-to-day activities, let alone an elite athlete. In Tatiana's own words, having cancer was not as bad as not being able to wrestle and the darkness that can ensue from an injury. So she got into BJJ after the injury. So the Olympic plans didn't necessarily work out, but she got right back into it. And maybe against some better judgment in some ways, but maybe just about perseverance. In 2014, she made her pro debut. So very quickly, after just 3 fights pro, she was able to land a spot on The Ultimate Fighter. And this is when Claudia Gadelha was one of the coaches, and she was Claudia's first pick. Because, of course, like athletes like this, she was able to see something in her. That heart shined through. And it did.
I love everything about the sport. That's why I think it's so difficult for a lot of people to hang up the gloves, sometimes, because they love it so much and they put so much into it, and a lot of it becomes their identity, and so the same for me, and that's why I think it wasn't really that difficult to train through the injuries, because I'm like, well, this is just who I am.
Tatiana has incredible heart, inspiring people all over. So many young wrestlers who she works with at the high school in California, same place where she was wrestling as a kid. People are looking up to her. So we have two fighters who have dealt with a fair share amount of injuries. I mean, Tatiana, a lot more extreme injuries in terms of career derailment. So the neck injury actually returns. So fast forward, wins tough, and in 2019, neck injury comes back. Has to take a little bit of time off, but we're back again. Works on it because that's who she is. Then things get even crazier when she basically tears her knee off of her own leg. I mean, that is insane. I mean, the extreme extent to which her knee was wrecked. So had to take off even more years. So that was 3+ years from the knee injury that she had to take off from 2019 to 2023. So she had finally made it was proving to be somebody that we should really be looking out for and faces another derailment. I can think of somebody who knows a story like that. It's Dominick Cruz. If you don't know Dominick Cruz's story of many injuries and coming back from that, they have a very, very similar story in that sense. Can I sign anywhere? Except for the face. Do you know where that comes from? Okay. Anyway, so you have Weili and you have Tatiana. Two people who have both respectively been training their entire lives for this moment. And two people who believe it's their destiny. They think that it's their destiny to fight in this cage, to be mixed martial artists. And now they meet. Both of them had faced adversity in life circumstance and adversity with major injuries. And here they are. Paths finally crossing in a championship match versus number one contender. It couldn't be more exciting than this. You have two people, absolutely unbreakable spirits, and they are role models in their own sense, representing something very real, their communities and their legacy. And their legacy is that of not giving up in the face of adversity. This isn't to feed their egos. This is about something much bigger. And they happen to be the best possible fighters that we could get, that you could see. They happen to be at the highest level possible. So not only is it their destiny, not only have they faced adversity and come out on the other side, but they are amazing mixed martial arts practitioners. They are, in their own respective ways, incredible. But what's the breakdown here? What's it gonna look like? First, Zhang Weili in the stats. Just a quick recap. Only loss professionally is to Rose Namajunas, and one of those is a split decision loss. First time they met was a KO. Second time she improved so massively, some people even scored it in her favor. I say that's pretty good. And 25-2 as a pro in total. So she's never been submitted in the UFC, though. That's an important detail to look at here, especially for this fight. She may have lost. She's never been submitted. So she's got 5 title wins. She has main event experience. She's been there. She's TKO, submission, and decision ready. She's got all of those things in her arsenal. And she's currently on a 4-fight win streak. Fighting with the right attitude, a champion in reality, but also at heart. And her dad is her hero. Just a little. But that's our champion. So who's our challenger? Tatiana Suarez. Like I said, wrestling 101. But not just wrestling, all right? She's got it all. Her hands are there too. Her mom is her hero, but it's complicated, as I mentioned. I mean, maybe pushed her too hard, took a lot of stock in Tatiana's success, which is hard to cope with as a kid, but they've reconciled, and that's important to understand. Life needs context. She's undefeated, okay, including cancer. Cancer can't stop her. Won that battle as well. She's got high striking and takedown accuracy, MMA complete, and some really significant wins aside from being undefeated over people like Carla Esparza, also Jessica Andrade, and submitting Alexa Grasso. That is extremely legit. That's why she's made her way to number one, a spot that she deserves and has unfortunately not fought in 2 years, not because she's busy kicking her feet up and relaxing, but because of some intense injuries and necessary recovery time. As I mentioned, the Dominick Cruz story. If there's anybody who understands, it's Dominick Cruz. And he actually has been fortunate enough to be at the table watching her fights. We've been fortunate enough that he's been at the table, the commentary table, during her fights, because I feel he's giving a lot of really great insight on that many of us can forget. All of the things about having a layoff like that, the darkness, the ring rust, and talking yourself up into believing it's going to be okay. But she hasn't tasted defeat yet, and still has the right attitude about it still. I don't think that when the time comes that record does get scratched, that it's something that's going to take her spirit away, because she does have that heart of a champion and is unbreakable. So how can we possibly pick this? It's really, really tough. This is really tough. However, I think that Tatiana Suarez is going to pull this off. And she is our dynamic pick. I think that the hunger, the desire to finally reach that championship status is going to be what she needs ultimately. I think that the biggest challenge is going to be the fact that she goes for the submission. Tatiana prefers submitting as a wrestler, as wrestling as her foundation, wrestling in later BJJ, and Weili has never been submitted. That's not the way that you can beat her, it seems. Obviously, it's there, the option, and is that what we're going to see? I don't know. I do think that it's likely to end in decision, but what a statement it would be if Tatiana could come back and get a submission win over Zhang Weili. Two incredible women. That is the fight that I feel has the most MMA implications. There is so much at stake here with the story of the UFC and the story, respectively, that these two women have, the communities that they represent. There is a lot happening. Really worth tuning in. It's worth checking more out about both of these women. Please, if you have the opportunity to watch Unbreakable and you have HBO Max, whatever they call it these days, it's a quick movie. It's not even a feature-length film, and it'll really get you to appreciate the road that Tatiana has taken to get to this point. And check out Weili too. I have yet to find like a big documentary piece, but there's tons of information out there. The UFC has done a lot of pieces on her as an accomplished champion, as the first ever Chinese champion. Check out her story. There are so many parallels. Fighting at age 4, had injury. Most importantly, these two women believe that this is their destiny. There is nothing pushing them to do this other than a desire within their own heart. And with that heart, we're going to see some fireworks. So get excited for the co-main event. Get excited and get your cats and pet them and watch UFC with your cat. Teach him some moves too. I can see that he wants to hit me right now. Can you see it in his eyes? Oh.